potentially, hopefully. I'll be sad if it doesn't record. So, Maya is not the most accessible piece of software in the world, but it is still like a piece of software and can be accessed. So we're going to go through and talk about the basics of the interface and how you're going to want to get going in it, and then also hopefully get to how you might take your nice normal scan and make it kind of weird. So for the moment, I'm just going to kill these guys. We can talk about the interface a little. So probably it has things in common with 3D modelers you've probably already used, like Rhino, but it also does some things differently, sort of as a paradigmatic kind of thing, because it is an animation thing first and foremost, and not like a CAD type thing. So the first thing that will give you a bad time, when you open it up, it should look pretty. Is anyone actually running Maya through this, following along or anything? Does it look like this pretty much when you turn it on? Neat. So the first thing that's going to give you a bad time, potentially, is this little tab right here. This changes much of your interface, changes all your drop-downs at the top. For what we're doing right now, leave it on modeling. Eventually, we will use possibly all of these. I'm not sure. Probably not rigging. So, let's start with how you move the camera. In Maya, camera controls always occur through Alt. So you hold Alt, and then it's your various mouse buttons will manipulate your camera. So like middle click is your pan. You can zoom with right click if you're into that kind of thing. I typically do use this to zoom because I've found that middle clicking a lot is a good way to get a scroll wheel that starts slipping, and then you're trying to pan around it, suddenly like scoot forward a little, and then you tumble with right click. There's a lot of different ways of accessing everything in Maya. Maybe we'll go through those as we play with this object. So, as was mentioned, you can go File, Import to grab your thing. You may need to, if you're importing an FBX, I believe you will need to potentially turn on a plugin. So you can go all your instead of like your preferences occurring under Edit or under like a localized kind of tab, typically you can get to all of them through Settings and Preferences. So you go Window, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager in this case. And I have no idea if I have it on this computer, already turned on. Somewhere in here will be a Maya FBX plugin, I believe, which you may need to dig, right here, FBX Maya. You may need to go in and make sure this is enabled if you're going to load an FBX. I only have the OBJ version of this on my computer right now, so we'll just import that here. And I'm going to not bother dealing with texturing an OBJ for our purposes because you don't really need it. So, as you can see, our object is coming a little weird, which is fine. Maya, there's a lot of ways to do anything in Maya. I can load it up, but it'll be the same process. So to like your most basic manipulation controls, if you press Q, you will return to your mouse, which is just for selecting things. This comes in handy because when you press W, E, or R, you get a little gumball that allows you to manipulate to, in the case of W, move your object, E, rotate your object, and R, scale your object. This can be a real pain when you're trying to click something and it's like in your way, so you can pop over to Q to make it go away. So we're going to take this object. It's coming on its side. It is coming on its side because animation software typically thinks of Z as being like forward. CAD software is developed with the assumption of operating in plan in mind, so X and Y are in plan. Animation software assumes elevation, and so X and Y are like in elevation. So if you're moving back and forth between Maya and Rhino, you may need to keep track of what is up. It will tend to pop things in on their side. I don't know, you guys, did it come in on its side for you? Cool. So we can fix that with E, the rotate tool. I like to, instead of trying to like look at the little, you got your little like doodad that shows you which axis is which, instead of like trying to look at which one's which and then enter the 90-degree translate value over here in your channel box, which this is a place you go to affect things you have done. I know that's like a really terrible description, I'm sorry. Translate and then properties of things will occur in this area. I'll just like turn it a little in the correct axis and then pop over here and just type in what I want. So we can then hit W and scoot this guy down so it's, you know, somewhere in an okay-ish spot. As far as, so you'll note that our gumball is like not in a useful position, really. If you're using one of your WERs, you can hold D, and that will bring up this interface. This allows you to reposition where your gumball is occurring. You can also, if you're holding D, snap it to something, which can be nice. You guys probably don't have the, yeah. So you can, I mean, like snap it to whatever, which is more useful on regular geometry. It gets a little weird on like weird geometry. So that's sort of how you would manipulate your camera and move your object around. We can do, you know, whatever we're into on it. Because of the way in which photogrammetry likes to, well, I mean, mesh is made by computers, like things that a person didn't make, but rather a computer made algorithmically, tend to just be absolutely garbage. Like they tend to be just really gross meshes. So like this is like what is this? Right? So we're gonna have to get into some weird tools to affect this. As far as ways of changing objects, I'm gonna go Control H and just hide this guy for a second. I'm gonna pop over to the Polygon tab. I'm just gonna make a little thing to play with for a second to talk about sort of basics of mesh modeling. I'm assuming that anyone who just did what I did and made a little cube has a little cube just pop in to the middle of your grid here, which is fine. Typically, I like to do the following. I'll go into Create, Polygon Primitives, and toggle on Interactive Creation. With this on, you get prompted to draw a base and set a height. I rarely want a 1 by 1 by 1 little cube. So just to do some quick polygon modeling on this guy, we're going to go over again to our channel box here and set some subdivisions. So by default, a box comes in with one like poly, one quad per face. We're going to turn that up a little so that we can do some stuff with it. So I'm just going to set them all to 2 for now, which you can see how we've added these extra lines, which are extra like polygon faces. And so a bunch of stuff you need to do in Maya is contextual. So if we've got a polygon object in front of us and we hold right click on it, we'll get this interface. This, I at least almost exclusively use this for these guys. I would, like, possibly never have gone down here. So if we can, it's this menu, I'm just holding right click. There's lots of like right click and hold or click and hold stuff in Maya. So in here, we can select different ways of altering our mesh. So if we go to face, it's now highlighting different faces of the poly. So we can click on one of those, press W to get our transform tool, and start dragging it around. This can be, with some practice, like extremely fast, a very fast way to get geometry, which is why it's used in animation so much. Also, it's computationally light compared to NURBS, as a rule. We can also, vertex if we want to just pull one or whatever, which is fine. In Maya, you may find yourself not wanting something that's like chunky and planar like this. So if we want like, if we're doing, I don't know, blob texture, some kind of Cyric looking whatever, we can grab our object, and then if you press 3, I think it's 3, yeah, it's 3, you get a sort of simulated smoothing on your mesh that will like round all the corners and whatnot. This simulates adding subdivisions to the mesh without actually doing so, because enough subdivisions to get geometry that looks like this will be miserable to actually work with. You can press 1 to get it back. 2 gives you the hybrid stance. So this is showing you what the mesh actually is, and then also sort of this procedurally smooth version. If we take, let's not do that for the moment. We'll kill that. So we can, to show the object we just hid, we can go display, show, and then we can go show all, show last hidden. Show last hidden is really handy because you can make something go away for a second, do something, and then just pop that back. So typically I'll just use Control-Shift-H when I want to unhide something. Also, we can unhide all, hide by selection. So, with this guy, before I start mucking around with this mesh, does anyone have any questions about the stuff that I've talked about so far? About moving objects? There sure isn't, and it's horrible. No, Maya has like the mel script thing here, which lets you like type short scripts, but you can't just like start typing a command and getting a command. When working in Maya, I find Google on your other monitor is like a real nice thing to have. Most commands have hotkeys, and most commands have quick ways of accessing them. So if I'm doing something and I know like I'll be using this command a lot, I'll like go check the hotkey, go look up what menu it's in. There's also this business, which I'm not a huge fan of, called the hotbox, which is, I mean, a great name, right? Hold spacebar, and this will come up. Basically, all commands are present in this interface, but it's also just kind of your menu at the top. So, like, I mean, if you want, you can do this sort of thing. I don't find it particularly helpful. When you're working on something, if you hold Shift and right-click, you get a contextual set of commands based on the type of object you're working on, or like the type of selection you have. So like selected as an object, I can smooth it, I can extrude, whatever. If I was to go over and we're going to switch, say, to face selection, grab some faces and shift right-click on these, you'll see I get different commands. This can be nice, can be quite quick to get certain behaviors you're interested in. It can also be slow if you're like, is this a face command? Is this an edge command? So if you're looking for a specific command, in my mind, really Google is the quickest way to get there. Autodesk's official documentation is kind of garbage, but it exists. The tutorial community on Maya is not bad. It's not as good as like Rhino, but it's pretty okay. But yeah, anyone else have questions about what we're doing so far? Yes. I mean, well, let's find out. Yes, it's still recording, so that's good. Yep. Yep.
It always deletes, let's say, 3/4 of it, and then you can no longer delete any more parts of it until I return it back to its original model shape.
I'm curious about this. I'm not sure exactly what you're. Okay, so we've got this guy, and I like kill a face kind of thing.
Well, if I want to delete the whole thing, I highlight the whole thing, press delete, and then certain faces won't delete.
Interesting.
Right, and you almost having the same problem just now.
Are the faces that won't delete the face, like it's like, if we go like, so you're saying like this and then.
Yeah, and you have that face there.
Oh, strange. I've never seen that before.
But
if you make it smooth, it goes?
No, if you go right click, you go return to object mode.
Yeah.
And then do it.
Yeah. I'm not sure why there's one rogue face that wants to stick around. You can always, if you want to get rid of the whole thing, like switching to object mode is an approach there. So yeah, are we good to start monkeying with this thing? Yeah, you hold D, and then you get that little like doodad on the gumball, and then you can drag it or snap it to things. Oh, this one? I did Control Shift H, which is show last hidden. There's no like, by default, no hotkey for show everything, but you can like pop the last one back with the hotkey. So, I don't know what exactly decimating the mesh in Remake is going to give you for a geometry. You probably want to do that. I'm guessing like if you do that and it doesn't completely ruin your model, like probably do that. Because this is not a thing that you can affect at the scale of a vertex. Like if we go face or whatever on this, like good luck, right? Yeah, that's gonna be a bad time. So, undo is in Maya is actually Z, not Control Z. If you press Control Z, it will also undo. It doesn't care about the control added to it. Just kind of some amusing trivia, perhaps. So because this is so complex, we're going to edit it in roundabout ways. So Maya, like most mesh modelers, has something called soft selection. So if you press B, it will turn on. Yours is probably not as huge as this is. If you press and hold B, you can then left click and drag to change the size of your soft select radius, which can be nice for dialing it in. So with this, we've got this selection where it's yellow, it is full selection, and then as it falls off, it's less strongly selected. So if I do this, we get this nice kind of round deformation. You can soft select on shapes or whatever. You can grab a thing, hold shift to add to your selection, grab another thing, and start deforming things in that way, which can be nice. It's also, like for something like this object that we're looking at here, it's going to be how you'd want to do things like change the shape of that thing. You're going to have a bad time doing that without using soft select. It makes nice smooth things and whatnot. You can press B again to toggle it back off if you don't like looking at it or don't want it for some reason. What else can we do to adulterate this thing? We'll talk about, everyone's on board with soft select and deforming the mesh in that way? You hold B and then you drag, like left click and drag. Also true in Mudbox, incidentally. Let's make some changes with this and then we'll keep going here. To toggle soft select is B. Yeah. I was referring to the, if you like find this horrible to look at, which it kind of is, you can make it go away kind of thing. It doesn't, Maya is like really super deeply parametric, like fundamentally. It's like Revit in that regard, in that it understands things relationally as opposed to as like absolutes. Which mostly just means you get weird behavior you don't want. To my knowledge, you can't. What we're doing here is called mesh tweaking, where you're just changing the values of like the vertexes that make up the mesh. And as far as I know, you can't easily like go back into your history and like remove that. It's possible that there's a way that I find the whole world of like how Maya understands the relationships between things to be really super inaccessible. So I've never successfully done so. It might be possible, but I'm not sure. Should we keep going? Everyone cool to see some other tools? No, it will be. Oh, that's actually a good addendum, though. Interesting. Do you have this view going on? Shouldn't matter. Are you looking at like faces or vertices or something, or are you looking at the object into like as a whole? Because it won't give you anything meaningful in object mode because it's like either it's selecting the object or it isn't. If you switch over to like faces or vertex or something, you should then be able to start soft selecting. So, oh yeah, thank you. So if you just press spacebar, it will give you all four. If you are in a different, like have a different view, highlight it and press spacebar, it will give you that view. So you can just toggle back and forth between your views with spacebar, which I constantly try and do in Rhino, and it never works out for me. Typically for mesh modeling, perspective view pretty much is you want to be in perspective and moving your camera a lot. But sometimes you might be doing a thing where you want to like lay out a set of faces and then consider them three-dimensionally. So let's take a look at the sculpting tools, which I think will prove useful for this sort of thing. The sculpting tools are basically, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the software Mudbox, but they're basically Mudbox in Maya. So we've got a set of tools up here in this drawer. Got your, this is Sculpt Relax, I believe. So you have your mesh selected with it. You get this, this circle that indicates the size of the tool. I believe, yeah, holding B and clicking and dragging changes the size of your tool, same as your soft select. And with Sculpt, we can start to kind of deform in maybe a more intuitive way the shape of the geometry. But if I click on this, we're getting some weird, that's getting wild, right? And that's because our tool right now is much, much too strong for what we're trying to do. So if we want to sculpt and we do this and oh my god, what is that, right? We can go into Windows again, and we want to, I believe it is a setting preference thing, and we want tool settings. Let's get this little floating window. Maya absolutely loves spawning little floating, where is this? There you go. Absolutely loves spawning little floating windows for you. Maya is a great reason to own 2 monitors or more. 3 monitors is pretty nice, in that you'll have this sort of thing kicking around, or if you're doing a lot of whatever, edit mesh something, you can click and, oh shit, not the one I wanted. And now my computer is freaking out. So that's neato. There's a little handle at the top of any drop-down in Maya. You can click on the handle and drag it off, and you'll get a little palette that is that drop-down. So this is, I actually don't know what I did, or why we are now living in the world of the spinning blue thing. It can be really nice if you're using the same sorts of commands over and over again to grab and like hang on to the palettes those commands live in. Did I kill mine? It's under Windows, Preferences, I think it's called, and then there should be a tool settings. Settings and preferences, maybe? Okay. Oh yeah, to reduce the complexity of the mesh. Yeah, that's true. So does anyone have any questions while we're waiting for my computer to chooch?
Just in general, when you're importing your object, to reduce the mesh, would it make sense to get rid of that base floor?
It will reduce the number of polygons present in the mesh, getting rid of that. But we don't really care about the floor, so it doesn't. It's like you probably won't run into issues with the mesh being too heavy for your computer. You may run into issues with the mesh being too awkward to work with, right? So it's like you're probably going to be fine in terms of absolute number of polys. Like this mesh in that regard is not that crazy, but what it is a real pain to deal with this sort of density. So like you can get rid of the floor if you want. It's more this complexity that we care about. So one thing that we can do on that front though is I think it's mesh. It's either mesh or edit. I've done this one though. Right. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, oh boy. commands will typically have so we can, in this case, we can just turn down the intensity. If you, okay, I don't know why it's being terrible. Well, I know why it's being terrible, actually. With fields that are little numbers like this, in Maya, middle click and drag will let you like scrub them, like treat them like a slider kind of thing, which can be fine. In this case, this is quite heavy, so we're having a bad time actually like updating it in real time. So this will have reduced the complexity of the mesh to some degree, I believe.
We'll reduce it by 25%.
Is it by 25 or is it
By
220? Okay.
Yeah, so because this is pretty dense, you can pretty much go for 90, even 95.
Let's see what 90 looks like. It's one of those things where it's like the more you reduce it, the less accurate, like less true to your object, to your scan it will be. On the other hand, this is a lot more accessible than what we were just looking at. You definitely can. I suspect. I haven't. Let's find out if it works this way. But I think you can even soft select and reduce a soft selection. Like if I was to go like this here and then go reduce faces. Oh, so the thing I was going to mention earlier that I got sidetracked on, these little squares are your tool like properties. So that will give us an interface like this. Let's say we want to reduce that by whatever 90-ish%. If you click reduce, this menu goes away. If you click apply, it does the thing you told it to do and stays. So we can reduce just this soft selection. I think that didn't seem like it did anything. Interesting. It may not like a soft selection. It might want hard edges for reductions. But before we reduce, because we will reduce it and we'll go through and do some stuff on the simpler mesh. Before we do that, let's talk about the sculpt tools a little bit more, because they're a really nice way to do things. So if we open up our tool, our setting preferences tool settings, again, we'll need this out because we're going to be turning down the intensity of our sculpting in a second here. Oh, and just to show you the thing that I screwed up a second ago, this little bar here, no, what is going on? Okay, there we go. Apparently you just click on it. I thought it was click and drag. Will like instantiate a little window that is that palette. So if I'm doing a lot of stuff with the pending polygons, I might want to make this just a thing that I have floating here so I can grab that command a lot, like readily. We don't need that for this, obviously. So the tool settings is contingent on what tool you're using. We can turn down the size on this. And so we've got this open. We've got this open specifically to deal with the strength. So it was much too strong before. At this, that's more like what we want, right? Because this is a lot more controllable. You can come in, start making little lumps, adding to some stuff, whatever, right? There's a bunch of them. I won't go through all of them because there are quite a few, but they can be, I think, a really good approach to making changes like this. So you can kind of smooth it out or whatever. Another thing that you can do before we start talking about losing polygons and reducing the mesh, another thing you can do to a mesh of this complexity is, if we go to our tool settings for now, we grab this guy and we go to deform. Not all of the deformers are applicable to this, so like blend shape requires that you have another object that has the same topology as this mesh. We don't have one of those. We aren't going to be using blend shapes, but you can do a lattice on it. So we'll open up the lattice settings. And I'm just going to turn up, we'll put this to 5. So this is, has anyone done a cage edit in Rhino? You guys know about that? Terrible practice in Rhino. Don't do them. But in Maya, it is a thing that supports that kind of behavior natively, as opposed to cheating and giving you just the worst geometry ever. So we get this lattice around it. Our object is crooked, it's just a bounding box, sure, but it is fine for what we're doing right now. So with the lattice, it's the same as the mesh. You can go in, operate on it in object mode or as lattice points. We'll turn on lattice points, and then if we click one of these and move it, it sort of deforms the geometry in accordance with this kind of like simple large control object, which can be really nice for complex things like this if you want to make sort of simple changes to complex objects. this is a really nice way to do it. Also, the worst thing ever. I was playing around with this morning, and I was like, as long as I don't repeatedly fail to click on a vertex, it'll be a good tutorial, and here we are. One thing you'll notice with this, and this goes back to how Maya is intrinsically parametric, is that if we click on this guy, and we're like, sure, this is great, let's move it over to the origin. Whoa, what's going on there? It understands the relationship between these two things as like a live thing. So it's like this mesh has this effect, or this mesh is affected in this way by this lattice in space. So sometimes that can be really interesting to like set up a deformation and then sort of scrub through permutations of it. If you need to move it, if you want to get it free of your lattice, you can go edit, delete by type, and you want history. This purges all the relational data that Maya would otherwise have, telling it how these things relate, and it becomes instantiated as just a dumb object again. So we're fine. It's just a mesh. If we want to go to, let's do the thing we were talking about a second ago though, and do it on soft select. Grab all our faces. We'll do a reduce on them, and we'll take it down to 95%, let's say, and give my poor old laptop a second to, struggle with that. And so we've got this really chunky mesh, which is actually fantastic and typically what you want. I just pressed Q to pop back over to the select tool, which made the little palette disappear. Also, let's see what happens if we do this. If we press 3 and smooth it, which I think actually has potential as a formal move right there. Things you will note about this, and this goes back to the thing I was saying where machines make terrible meshes just as a rule. So this thing where we've got many edges meeting in one vertex. If you're modeling by hand, don't ever let this happen. It's produces meshes that are very likely to fail and meshes that are very hard to affect with a lot of different things. If you have got a mesh that looks something like this, you can go I think it's mesh down to cleanup, and then we can go through here and we can tell it to start how we want it to clean up the mesh, which it will just try and make the mesh more stable for you. So clean up, and it will. Is it doing things? Or did it decide this is okay? Apparently, it decides this is an okay mesh, which is all right, Maya. Sure. You typically want your mesh to be made up of like things with 4 sides, 3 or 4 sides, and to not have more than what is that? Like 6 edges meeting at a point. So if you watch tutorials and stuff, you'll see people making like what are good meshes. This is a not good mesh, but we'll play with it for now. So some of those tools I thought about discussing and then decided that we didn't need, but apparently we do need when we're looking at the cube. A huge one, a thing you will use all the time if you get to like sort of making things in Maya, is the extrude tool. So we're gonna shift right click, come down, extrude face. I do not know why it was giving me that trouble there. We'll take you to this interface. There is also a hotkey for it, and it escapes me right now. This lets you, my laptop sucks. You can drag off of it. You can scale things, move it, and this is different than grabbing your face and dragging it, because this is producing new faces. This is a new extrusion, a new thing that wasn't there before. So we can grab this guy, we can drag it out. Sure, that's cool. And then in our little palette here, we can set the number of divisions in it if we'd like. So let's say 3 divisions. We've got a little more control over it now. If we want, you may want to leave it at 1 division, for instance, if you are planning on moving around like this, because if it's 3 divisions, it will you'll only move the end of it by default. You'll have to figure out a soft selection thing or a way of constraining that geometry in some way. Pop over to here. If you've made a thing, if you decide to add some whatever tumors to your paper thing, A really useful tool to help you start getting sort of meaningful behaviors out of that is called the multi-cut tool. It can be accessed in the polygons panel here. It's this button. It's also, I think you can shift right click for it. Yeah, multi-cut. It will give you this sort of interface, and it lets you make decisions about where new faces will occur. So I clicked on one side, I clicked on the other side, I right click, and it gets instanced. And now there is an extra face here, so we can start getting a little more control over it. It is affected by hotkeys a lot. I don't know what that's about. The most useful, in my mind, there's a couple that are pretty good. Hold control will give you a loop, so it will give you the whole way around, which typically if you want to add some faces to your extrusion, that's how you're going to want to do it. You don't want to like draw all the way around it or whatever. It's nice and stable as well, adding a loop all the way around. It will not perform if there is nothing for it to loop. So if we're on something like this, we're just getting nothing meaningful out of holding control. Holding shift will snap you by default to the middle. If you click, you can click and drag. You can then sort of scrub through percentile markings, which is nice if you want to cut across a couple faces at the 80% mark. I think if you hold both, no, if you hold both, it does something else, and I don't know what it's doing. I don't know. So it snaps 10% gradations, but it doesn't give you the nice number it looks like. Is how that works. Yeah. Multi-cut and extrude are extremely useful. One thing that's worth talking about quickly here. How you can fix your mesh in Remake. If you have a hole, we can also fix holes in Maya. So we've got a hole here. Whatever, problem with the scan. Let's deal with that. If we go over to edge selection on a hole, hypothetically, with nice normal meshes that are well constructed, if I double click, it will give me the loop. So it did here as well. So double clicking in the edge tool when selecting, it will try and find for you an edge loop, and it will select the entire loop. If I shift right click on my loop selection here, I will have fill hole as an option. You just click that, and it will pop a little thing in there. Fill hole can get really super dirty depending on the geometry you're using it on. So like this was fine because this is just one face that we're dealing with. If we grab the face thing, and let's grab a few adjacent faces here and make a really gross hole. That's pretty gross. So if we use something like this, go edge, grab the thing, fill hole, it will probably give us, it will give us this. This is like absolutely terrible practice making shapes like this when modeling. It has way too many edges on one poly, so it will give you hard to control and unpredictable behavior. If you do have to do that, fill hole tool is a nice quick way to fill holes. You can come with your multi-cut tool after and just pop a little slice on it there. You'll notice that the way it was cutting does not cut across the polygon as imaged. This is because the multi-cut tool cares about this view. It is not aware of the smoothing. That's why this can be nice to sort of see what's going on with both. So if you click one vertex and another vertex, it will cut across the thing, but it won't look like it will, and that's because it isn't aware that the thing has been smoothed. Well, how are people doing? Is this okay? Do we need to go back on anything? Any questions or anything? Oh, like coarser? Okay, yeah. So in face selection, grab the whole thing, and let's get out of multi-cut. At least the way I've accessed it here, and there are always multiple ways to access everything, is shift right click, and then you come down to reduce faces. You can open your little menu, or if you just click it, you'll get a little this little guy. We're not reducing it by 95% again, although it becomes formally somewhat compelling. interesting. Radically reducing your mesh might make an interesting approach to adulterating it. So that's, and then the percentage is the amount you are reducing it, not the amount that is left. So if we just get out of that, does anyone else have anything that we should talk about here?
Is there ever like a return to normal function? I know that a lot of programs use that exit a bunch and it just gets really, really like highlighted and stuff.
No.
Yeah, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you get lost and like highlight a bunch of crap and it's like, oh my god, what
If you hit Q and just like click the void, it will unselect everything. But mashing escape, not really a thing in Maya, unlike many programs. Revit, for instance, just kind of drum the escape key until good things happen. But on the front of getting lost, a thing that is good to know are A and F. So if we have this, we're gonna make two objects. We'll make just a little whatever, little guy over. Damn it. Did I? Yeah, okay, sure. Two objects. If I'm in here and I press A, it will frame everything. So everything present in your scene will be visible on your screen if you press A. If I have a thing selected and I press F, it will frame only the thing selected. Which now this can be pressing F specifically. Super nice. A common issue that I've found is you have a Rhino file of some sort, you want to bring it into Maya, and someone made it on top of GIS data and decided to build where it is on the GIS data instead of on the origin in Rhino. You will get Maya cares about where the origin of the thing you made is. It will come off way out in space somewhere because someone just decided to snap to their GIS file and not to the origin. When that happens, though, and you want to find this thing that you've imported, you know it's in there, you know it's selected, where is it? Pressing F is a really nice way to just kind of jump to wherever it is, and then you can figure out how to slowly haul it back to the origin, which is not a thing I have a good solution for yet, I'm afraid. Any other questions? Anything people are confused about at all? Commands that were missed, etc. Cool. How are people feeling about this much information? Like, do you guys want more tools to alter your geometry, or is this kind of like need some digesting time here? So I can keep going, but it's up to you guys. I mean, like, stop. I mean, like, is this enough to play with for the next week, or? Interface and whatnot, yeah. Okay, so again, to recap, camera controls, hold Alt. Left click and Alt is tumble. Middle click and Alt is pan. Right click and Alt is zoom. So what it will do is it will actually rotate on the target of the camera that we are looking through. See above about Maya being animation software. It thinks in terms of things like cameras. So if you pan, your pan and zoom is changing your lens length basically. Pan is moving the target of the camera, and tumbling will occur around that target. A quick way to get it to be useful if you're like, I don't know if you guys have ever encountered in Rhino the thing where it's like you really want to tumble and it's like tumbling around nothing meaningful. And it's just a huge pain. It's the same solution for in Maya basically, where you just grab your object and then just hit F to frame it, and now you're tumbling around your object. Yes, it will absolutely frame just a face if you want, which can be nice. We can also, it's possible to view the camera we're looking through and that sort of thing, and then you can start doing things where you're in another view, moving your perspective view and stuff. Typically not really necessary for modeling. That's more of like a rendering kind of extra sphere. That's neat. Rendering type technique to help you get like a camera that's actually 6 feet off the ground or whatever. So those are the camera controls. To move things, we use W, E, and R, with Q being your sort of reset, your selection tool. So W, we get our transform gumball. E is our rotate gumball, and R is our scale gumball. This is probably a decent way if your mesh comes in and it's ridiculously huge. You can do it with this tool to fix that. You can also over in your channel box change these numbers. So often if things are out of scale, they're out of scale by like a factor of 10 or 100 or whatever. So you can start like 0.1, 0.1, and now it's 1/10 the size it was, right?
Benefit that you can make it small like that as opposed to it's just scaled up.
It-
Geometry's not really different.
There's a few reasons you might want to. Well, that is one step not far enough. There we go. There's a few reasons you might want to. Maya is aware of not really scale per se, but like dimensions. So it's like one Maya unit is one grid thing. It's kind of, for almost all cases, it's arbitrary what you think of a Maya unit as. You can think of it as a meter or a centimeter or a foot or whatever, just based on like what your model's already in. There are some edge cases on that when it comes to rendering, but for most purposes, treat a unit as whatever you want to treat a unit as. So making it smaller can be nice because it can let you like sort of maintain a degree of sort of dimensional rigor as you mesh model. Like it's not, Maya is not a, mesh modeling in general is not a particular like sort of dimensional hard firm tool, but it can be nice to be able to be like, this little box is a person, this is roughly person sized or whatever, and like sort of have that kind of information. The other reason is that technically your camera will have a, I'm gonna cheat and alter this to show you guys what I mean. Your camera has a far and near clip. I'll talk about what this is and how I got here in just a second, but if we set this to like, so if you have a really super large object, it will start getting clipped off like this because it's just, the camera is clipping to save like computer resources and it's clipping your object. That's pretty hard to have that problem occur, but where's my object? It's out in the distance, why can't I see it? That would be why. Is because it's outside the clipping plane of the camera. So what I did there to get that tool, and this is good to know actually. Control A is your attribute editor. You'll probably want to be turning it on and off. I hate having it attached to the thing because it redraws the perspective every time you toggle it. This is a great thing to keep on your second screen if you have one. And it will give you contextually sensitive information about whatever you have selected. Comes up a lot in rendering, but it can be a place to sort of go to look for information about what you're doing or to make changes to what you're doing. The other thing I did there was I just selected the camera, which is this button here. Selects the camera we're currently looking through, and then we can start making changes to the camera if necessary. A really nice change to make. This may come up with what you're doing with this project, but an awesome thing to do is to increase the near clip to some number, and then we can start to, maybe a little small, let's take it up to 10. Start to look inside things, which if you're doing a building, can be pretty nice. But anyways, so you can bring your thing in, rotate it, scale it. If we're using our like gumball stuff, holding D lets us reposition it, either arbitrarily in space or snapped to something, and it will reposition all of them at once, so you don't have to like manually set your translate and rotate and stuff. It's center of rotation, center of scaling, which is sometimes useful if you want to do something like say scale from like just make it shorter in one dimension or longer in one dimension or what have you, which is sort of the same approach typically you'll want to use in Rhino. So that I would hope is, but yeah, you can see how it's like I've set the pointed scaling from to one side, and so now I can like dial in the length of the overall form or what have you. Also crash my poor little laptop, jeez. So there's those as sort of your basic manipulating geometry. If you right click, it will change the way you are selecting things, and this is contextually sensitive to what you're right-clicking on. So as we saw a minute ago with the lattice, if you right-click on the lattice, you'll get different options here than if you right-click on a mesh. Same story with a NURB, will give you different options. If you shift right-click, you will get options that are based on what you have selected, or I guess in this case just sort of what we're doing anyways. But if we click this, we'll get one set of options. If we switch over to edges, we get a different set of options. So if you can't find a tool you're looking for in here, but you know it was in here a minute ago, it's probably because you've changed what kind of selection you're using. What else do we talk about? Soft select is toggle with B. You may want to make a deformer lattice, and that is a lattice for only the face I had selected, so it's teeny. If you make a lattice and you can't figure out why you're having a bad time subsequently moving your thing, it's because you need to delete your history, which is edit, delete by type, history. And then to do the mesh reduce is in, I guess you can just do it in object mode too for the whole thing. Shift right click, reduce, set a number, it will simple it up. You toggle what kind of preview you're looking at with 1 through 3. Incidentally, 4 through 7 are different like view modes. 6 might not be a thing. 7 shows you a scene like with your lights present in your scene. Not really important for what you're doing right now though. Is there anything that I did not suitably recap? Anything you guys, any questions outstanding? Ready to go pretend to be animators and then make actual animators really depressed because it's like architects are terrible at Maya? What's up?
Super basic question. When you made the prism, where was the setting to active data or like change that?
Oh, for sure, sorry. So if you go create polygon primitives, you get interactive creation toggle here. You can also do it for other things you're creating, but stick to polygons for the minute. NURBs in Maya are probably not worth it if you already know Rhino. And then once you've made a thing, to set the characteristics of it, you want to come over to your channel box and set your width, height, etc. Divisions, you can also make it exactly 20 or whatever if you want. An important thing to note though is if for some reason, I don't think you'll really need to for this project, but if you've got a thing, say 1 in each category, or maybe we'll go with 2, and you decide you want to move something, okay, that's cool, but it would be nice if I had more divisions, and you find your way into, where is it? Oh, that's strange. Oh, there we go. Into your inputs polygon cube thing, and you want to change this, it will typically behave erratically. Because the way it understands the mesh topology is probably not the way we understand it. So that's typically you want to set the number of divisions you want, and then model. If you need to add extra edges, use your mesh cut tool or your multi-cut tool. And that's holding control to duplicate loops.
Just to add, so you guys know Rhino already. There are 2 things that are basically different here. One thing is that when you undo, it counts for selections you have made before as well.
That's very true.
Rhino doesn't. So
Which is fantastic.
Pretty handy, but also it takes the number of undos that you have. So make sure if you're setting the number of undos, you take that into account, that it will count your every selection that you do as well. The other thing is that it keeps the history of all the stuff that you have done, because if you select one thing, it will be in the inputs menu right there in the object mode there. So before you have deleted the history, you can go back and re-edit whatever you have done on an object. It's basically an object-oriented modeling.
Yeah, so you can see all the things I've done to this shape so far.
Yeah.
It gets tricky in a hurry what exactly the behaviors that will come out of it are. But for instance, this was when I extruded this little nub here, and we can go and let's say turn down. Let's put this to 2 and see what happens. And now the extrusion is shorter.
and then we'll recalculate all the process has done on it afterwards.
So it's like I added some faces to it. Those faces are now shorter. But as a caution, don't rely on being able to go back in and do something to change geometry you're not happy with, because typically it will not necessarily relate in the way you thought it did, and you will often get very bizarre results. Just think of anything that needs mentioned?
And then but sometimes it gets too heavy and you have to delete the history. So make sure you save multiple files in a way that you can go back to them.
Maya has actually probably my favorite feature ever, which is not just incremental saving, but incremental saving on a hotkey. So Control Alt S is will throw down an incremental save where it will 001, 002 after the name. Same as Rhino, except you don't have to go to the menu. You can just throw down a new incremental save, which is lovely. Although less lovely is... is this crap that comes up. If you're saving a thing, I have wasted like entirely too much of my life hitting Control S and then Alt tabbing out and wondering why it hasn't saved because this little thing popped up and I didn't click it. Just remember that's going to be there, and it's super annoying.
So I think just save your Maya file as a Maya file. That's actually good for now if you're talking about the file type. But what you're gonna do basically is that you name your object, you scan it, you take it into Maya. Basically, you will maybe delete the base and keep the object, work with it, and then make sure you're saving every step. So save as much files as you can, because in the future you might go back and create a diagram of the process you went through, all the changes you made. So it's good to have all the history. And they should not be huge files, but if that's your concern, also in these type of software, zipping the file will reduce a lot of the size, so that's also a good thing for archiving. On a personal note, it's also good to put a date somewhere in the file name, maybe 17/01/11 for today, and it's hard to change it to 12. Instead of going final, real final, I swear it's the final. So just have that in mind.
Definitely makes it way nicer when you're going back. Is that reasonable, Branko?
Yeah, just want to add that what you will be making will change along the way. You're going to start with your initial model that is made with a remake, turned into Maya, and you will be making another physical concept again. And it won't be a replica of what you started with, but it will be an interpretation of what you started with. So you will be manipulating with all the remaking.
Are they scanning all their physical iterations? Because they're doing multiple physical models. And then
They're just starting with one physical model.
Oh, okay.
Then they're ending with another physical model.
Okay. I don't know where
We'll be documenting the process in the board at the end of the assignment.
Did we just choose one of the three?
I'm sorry?
Did we just choose one of the three models we made, or
As an master description or that they have to make three process to start with. Yeah.
That's the part I overlooked.
That was a typo.
it would.
So I think the purpose was to make three. I'm not sure if you have to scan all three, but
I mean, it becomes a lot of time taking
Yeah.
photos.
No, it's not, I don't think, I'll check with that, but I don't think the objective was to actually maybe work with all three. But they actually work with one, so to speak, and move it to the process. I'll verify with that.
and then you might wanna, so for every object that you're going to scan, you might wanna go and do different rounds of taking photos, because the first time you do it, you'll figure out that you're missing some stuff or it's doing good things to you. The first object I started scanning, as Steven was mentioning, it was a sculpture, and then part of it was here, the other part was over there because I moved the object
Yeah.
in the process. So give yourself a big amount of time to go and try it and see how it works, because it's kind of time consuming to take all the photos, upload it.
Has anyone already scanned a thing with Remake? Done that yet? Yeah. It would be good to at least try it for the first time, probably today, if you can, because
Even
you're
if it's not your proxy, just try it with something.
well, you're waiting for all the time it takes for Autodesk to send the file back to find out that you screwed up the photos. So it's like in terms of like actual hands-on hours, it might not be that long, but also it's like if you have to wait 2 hours for Autodesk to send you the file, that's 2 hours you can't be working on the project, right? So
It's also good to devalue the photo because before waiting for the actual scan, it will kind of, on a shorter
Yeah,
range,
it may-
tell
may-
you if you have screwed into it or any other photo doesn't match.
shoot down some stuff. If there's no further questions, I'm gonna kill the recording though.